What's going on, everyone? Welcome back to the channel. We got another mailbag for you guys today. But first off, gotta get the intro out of the way. I'll try and keep it short. I just dropped a reaction video where I reacted to Andre Miller's 52-point performance. That was a really fun video to make. It's available to Patreon donors, so if you're interested in that sort of content, check out the link in the description below. It's only $5 a month. It helps me out, and I'll get you guys some extra content. Now, I'm thinking about possibly making that channel not necessarily only for Patreon donors. I'm thinking about having some reaction videos for Patreon donors only, and then having some reaction videos for everybody. Reaction videos are the easiest type of video to make. I can literally make a 15-minute video in about 20 to 25 minutes. So I might end up doing a little bit of content on like a Blazers Uprise Reacts channel or something like that. If you guys are interested in that, let me know. Since that would be a separate channel, I wouldn't really be worried about having highlights on that channel, so I would react to some highlights and that type of stuff. So let me know if you're interested in that. Also, merch is still available. There's a link in the description below, and if you want to join our Discord server, there's also a link down there. So with that being said, let's jump into your questions from the past week. Ben Hewitt says, what is Torrey Jones' second favorite current team? I don't have a second favorite team based on the franchise. It's just based completely off players. Right now, I kind of like the Boston Celtics. I'm a fan of Jason Tatum's game. I'm a fan of Jaylen Brown, Kemba Walker, Enes Kanter's now there. So I do like them. I also like the Indiana Pacers. I think they're always underrated. I think they're kind of like the Trailblazers of the East. And honestly, I like a lot of the teams in the East just because I like a lot of the players in the East, and they're not really rivals with the Portland Trailblazers. So I like Siakam. I like that Raptors squad. I like the Bucks too. I'm a fan of Giannis. If Giannis ends up leaving to the Warriors, I won't be a fan of Giannis. We'll get into that later. But I'm a fan of Giannis. Chris Middleton, I think, is super underrated. So a lot of the playoff teams in the East I really like. I even like the Miami Heat right now. They got Myers. They got some other players I like. I like Bam's game. And they do a really good job of developing young, unheralded players. I mean, you look at Duncan Robinson and Kendrick Nunn coming out of nowhere and being contributors to a playoff team there in Miami. Those types of storylines are fun to follow, and I just like that organization right now. I like what they've been able to do. So it's hard to pick one out of all those teams, but I do like all of them. My second favorite team definitely wouldn't be from the West. Right now, I don't really like any team from the West. I do kind of like what the Grizzlies have done with their young core. I like a lot of their young players. But then again, we're battling for the 8th seed with them, so I don't like them right now. But I am a Morant fan. I am a Brandon Clark fan. So if I had to pick a team from the West, it might be Memphis. You might notice I changed clothes. Well, that's because I was just editing this video and I got to the point where apparently my audio cut out. So the last like 20 minutes of that recording had absolutely no audio. This has been a problem I've been dealing with a lot lately, and it strikes again. It happened with the Marcus Aldridge video that I'm going to have to re-record and get out to you guys soon. I've just been having a really tough time with my mic setup. So anyway, jumping back into what I've already answered, I'm just going to call him Michael for short. And in the last video, he asked me a question about what I thought about Bay. And the problem is there's two Bays in this draft. There's Siddiq Bay and there's Tyler Bay. Right here, Michael was clarifying it. He was asking about Siddiq Bay. So what I think about Siddiq Bay is he's probably going to be a role player on a decent team at some point in his NBA career. He does have a pretty high floor, but he also has a low ceiling. So he's a pretty safe prospect, but definitely not a guy who's going to become an all-star level player in my mind. He could definitely be a 40% three-point shooter. He shot 42% at Villanova last year. He's a knockdown shooter, and he's also a decent defender. I do have a little bit of concern over his lateral quickness, but I do think he'll be able to be a good NBA defender. Pretty much everybody that's come out of Villanova has become a good NBA defender. You look at Mikal Bridges, Dante DiVincenzo, who wasn't thought of as a good defender coming out of college. Now he is a good defender. I think Jalen Brunson is solid. Josh Hart is solid. You have a lot of good defenders that come out of Villanova. And honestly, Villanova has had terrific luck with prospects going to the NBA and being good NBA role players, and I think Siddiq Bay is the next one. So he should be a 3-and-D guy. The problem is he just is not athletic enough to really be much more than that. He's not a guy who's good at beating closeouts. He's not super quick with his first step. So if he does get run off the line, he kind of runs into some problems. He's not able to get downhill and attack the rim. He's not really able to create. He is a decent passer, but it just comes within the flow of the offense. It doesn't really come from him creating shots for others with his live dribble. So I think he'd be a pretty safe pick, but I don't really like him for Portland because Portland should have a good bench next year. I've talked about this in videos past. You should have Rodney Hood, Hassan Whiteside, and Gary Trent Jr. off the bench. So then you have that 9th spot that you could fill by using the mid-level exception on a guy like Harkless, or maybe use the trade exception to bring in a guy like Bjelica. Regardless, that would set up a good 9-man rotation that I don't think Siddiq Bay would be good enough to be a part of. And given my questions about his long-term growth, if he can't crack the rotation immediately as a rookie, are we sure he's ever going to be good enough to crack the rotation, especially when you got young projects like an Anthony Simmons and Nasir Little that are developing, and I'll talk about them in a little bit. He just doesn't make a ton of sense for Portland because I do expect Portland to be in a position to build a really good bench going into next year, and I don't think they need a player like Siddiq Bay, especially since Gary Trent Jr. has kind of developed into that 3-and-D wing mold. Therefore, he's not a guy that I like for Portland. I do like his game. I do think he makes a lot of sense for a lot of teams. Some teams, I'd be willing to take him at like 10 or 11. But for Portland, he doesn't make much sense. I'd rather go with a high upside guy that can play either forward position like a Jaden McDaniels. I'm bringing Chili says, what do you think our starting lineup will be in 5 years? And if I had to throw out a wild guess, I guess it would be Lillard, McCollum, Little, Collins, and Nurkic. But 5 years down the line is a really long time to predict. I have no idea what our starting lineup will be in 5 years. CJ might be gone. Nurkic might be gone. I have no idea. Hopefully Dame wouldn't be gone. Hopefully Dame would still be here. But you look at our lineup 5 years ago, we had LaMarcus Aldridge, Wes Matthews, Nick Batum, Robin Lopez, Damian Lillard, and Damian Lillard was the only guy left over a year later. So stuff can change quick in the NBA, and if you're going to talk about 5 years from now, it's really hard to answer that question. Brian Scalabrini says, assuming we are really good next year and Simmons and Little don't play, when will we really expect them to show their full potential? And the next question after this also talks about Nasir Little. It's from Rupam Nag. I probably butchered your name. I apologize. They say, what do you think Nasir Little's role will be going into next season? Is it safe for his development to leave him out of the rotation given the promise he showed in his rookie year? Now, I know he asked about Nasir Little in this question, but I'm also going to talk about Anthony Simmons because I think Anthony Simmons and Nasir Little are in the same boat. So I'm going to answer this question first and then go back to Brian Scalabrini's. I do not think Anthony Simmons and Nasir Little will have a role next season. I think if the team is healthy, neither of them will be in the rotation. I don't think any of them showed enough this year where you have to include them in the rotation next year. I think the only young player that's kind of done that is Gary Trent Jr., but even then, if we have better players than him, then Gary Trent Jr. might not play either. We're trying to contend. We're in Dame's prime. So the emphasis isn't on developing 20-year-old talent. The emphasis is on winning games. Now, of course, you want to develop your young talent. That is a good thing for any franchise to do, no matter how successful they are in the present. But it would be a mistake to sacrifice wins in order to develop young talent. Now, as I've already said, I think we're in position to have a really good bench lineup next year. Therefore, I don't expect either of those guys to have a role unless something happens. Maybe we make a consolidation trade where we trade multiple players for one really good player, and then we need to fill in back-end spots of the rotation. Or hopefully we don't have injuries like we did this past season, but that could happen again. So if something happens, yeah, they could find their way into the rotation. But if the team is healthy, and they don't make some consolidation trade, I don't expect either of those guys to have a role. Now, the second part of this question said, is it safe for Nasir Little's development if we leave him out of the rotation this year? And Brian Scalabrine kind of asked the same sort of thing. When do I expect them to show their full potential? And honestly, they have a ton of time. An NBA player's prime is what, 27 years old? They still have 7 years before they reach their prime. So they're 4 years away from being 3 years away. That they have a ton of time to develop. They do not need to play next season. It might help them a little bit in order to get NBA experience, but they got a lot of stuff that they got to learn that they can learn without playing minutes for an NBA team, that they can learn in practice, that they can learn from the coaching staff watching film, or in other ways other than just playing in games. And if we decide to not play those guys next year, their development isn't going to be completely screwed over at 21 years of age. They're still going to have a ton of time to develop, and honestly, we could sit them out for the next 3 years, and I still think they could develop to their full potential. I don't think not playing them over the next couple years is going to limit anything. I just hope that if they aren't in an NBA rotation, that the coaching staff is still able to develop them well. So Russell First Round Exit Westbrook says 2 questions. Number 1, how would you feel if Giannis actually did go to the Warriors next offseason? I would not be a Giannis fan anymore. As I said, man, If he went to the Warriors, he'd basically be following in Kevin Durant's footsteps. And you see how Kevin Durant is viewed? He left a small market team that was really, really good in order to go to the Golden State Warriors, and he was unhappy and he left. I honestly don't know why Giannis would follow in KD's footsteps, especially seeing how that went down. Yes, KD won 2 championships, I believe. I forget how many he won, but they're not even looked at as real championships by a lot of fans. If he won 1 championship in OKC, fans would have viewed that as more of an accomplishment than the multiple championships he won in Golden State. That's going to be the same thing for Giannis, okay? Giannis has a terrific team there in Milwaukee. If he stays in Milwaukee, I have no doubt that he'll win a championship at some point in his career due to how good the Milwaukee Bucks are. They have to figure some things out in the playoffs, but this isn't like the Toronto Raptors with DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry, where they had to end up getting rid of DeMar DeRozan to bring in a Kawhi Leonard to win. They already have that top 3 superstar. Some would argue that Giannis is the best player in the NBA right now. Milwaukee has done a great job of surrounding him with role players that fit his game and play really well off him. You got Chris Middleton there, who is possibly the most underrated player in the entire NBA. You got Eric Bledsoe, Brook Lopez. They've brought in Wesley Matthews. George Hill was terrific last season. They have some good role players around Giannis in Milwaukee. I have no doubt he'll win a championship. He needs to stay there. He needs to not end up going to the Golden State Warriors. It's going to be a lot harder for the Warriors to get Giannis than it was for them to sign KD, because they were able to use cap space for KD, and they'd have to sort out some sort of sign and trade for Giannis, or they'd have to trade for Giannis before he became a free agent in order to land him. And that's going to be a lot more difficult if Giannis even wants to go to Golden State. Therefore, I'm not really worried about Giannis going to Golden State. I think he'll stay in Milwaukee. The media just wants to push that narrative because that's what the media does. The national media wants Giannis in Golden State because it would be good for ratings, I guess. I don't know. ESPN, Bleacher Report, media just boggles my mind. I'll have a ton of respect for Giannis if he stays in Milwaukee. I'll have none if he goes to Golden State, rides the coattails of Steph Curry and Klay Thompson while walking in the shadow of Kevin Durant just to win like 5 straight championships. That better not happen, man. And the second part of his question is a run-on from the last video where I got asked if I was like Snoop Doggy Dogg or something, and Westbrook says, "Are you Snoop Diggity Doggy Dogg?" I don't get it. Maybe this is a meme or something. I don't understand the joke. Could somebody please explain? I'd appreciate it. Michael is back with another question. He says, "I don't want to trade CJ, but if we ever did, who would you want to get in return?" Not Ben Simmons. Okay, that's a horrible trade idea. If the Blazers trade CJ, they need to get a better player than CJ McCollum. And if they get a player that's only marginally better, and it's a little bit of a debate who's better, then that player that they get needs to be as good of a fit off of Dame as CJ is. The thing is, you can make the argument that Ben Simmons is better than CJ McCollum. I'm fine with that. I'm not going to sit here and say that CJ is better than Ben Simmons. The problem with that trade is Ben Simmons needs the ball in his hands to be effective. Ben Simmons is a much worse fit next to Damian Lillard than CJ McCollum is. So when Dame has the ball in his hands, the team is worse than before because CJ's better playing off the ball than Ben Simmons. Sure, you could offset that by putting the ball in Simmons' hands a little bit more, but that's just taking the ball out of Dame's hands, which probably makes us worse. Now, you could definitely make the argument that it would allow Dame to get off the ball more and he could run around screens more and kind of play a little bit more of a Steph Curry type role. The thing is, you don't need Ben Simmons in order to use Dame like that. The coaching staff could utilize Dame like that if they really wanted to, and I actually think it'd be successful. I've been asking for it for a while. The problem is the coaching staff doesn't utilize Dame like that. They never have, and I don't think they would even if they got a Ben Simmons. So I don't want Ben Simmons on this roster. I don't want another non-shooter in the lineup that's not a center. Now, the other guy that's been floated as a trade possibility for CJ is Aaron Gordon, which makes even less sense because that guy didn't even shoot 30% from 3 last year. He isn't a good defender. He needs to play in an up-tempo offense to be effective, and the Blazers are a slow-it-down type of offense. And he's not a great pick-and-roll big unless he's catching lobs. But the thing is, we don't really throw lobs. Aaron Gordon is a horrible fit no matter how you look at it. I don't understand why fans want him. What's funny is the same fans that want Aaron Gordon are the same fans that couldn't stand having Al-Farouq Aminu and Maurice Harkless out there on the court because they only shot like 34 or 35% from 3 in their tenure here in Portland. The thing is, if you didn't want Maurice Harkless and Al-Farouq Aminu because they weren't good enough shooters, why in the world would you want Aaron Gordon? He's not a better shooter, and he's a worse defender. It doesn't make any sense. I saw a trade idea thrown out there like CJ for Evan Fournier and Aaron Gordon and maybe a pick, I think. I think it was the 15th pick. The thing is, though, we need more top-end talent. We don't need to downgrade top-end talent. That's not going to make us a better team. If we trade CJ, we need to get somebody better than him. Or if they're about equal level as CJ, they need to be a noticeably better fit. That's the only way I'm okay with trading CJ. And honestly, there's not really anybody on the market out there right now that fits that bill. People will throw out Bradley Beal, but that's not going to happen. That's not realistic. And then they'll throw out Ben Simmons and Aaron Gordon, and it just makes me facepalm. I don't get it. Randall Pink Floyd said, could Noah Vonleh become a plan C at power forward for the Blazers? Made $2 million last year, so he could be had for the veteran minimum. I mean, I'd be cool with Noah Vonleh, I guess, but that's a minimum level signing. I wouldn't want Vonleh in the rotation, but I'd be fine with him as an 11th or 12th man. Destrom says, I know you live in the Vancouver area. That's Washington, by the way, not Canada. But if the Sonics came back, would you dip to that team and strand the Blazers? Destrom, I hope you're trolling. Nikos Kodakris says, do you believe that the Blazers will give up Anthony Simmons and involve him in a trade? Personally, I would give him one more year to prove himself. And given how much Neil Olshey apparently loves Anthony Simmons, the only way I see the Blazers trading Simmons is if they get back a star-level player. But the thing is, there's not going to be much top-level player movement in the NBA this offseason. I think it's going to be a very quiet offseason, one of the quietest offseasons in a while. And therefore, since there's not really going to be any stars on the market that I can think of, I don't see Anthony Simmons getting traded. I think he'll be back next year. And that wraps up your questions from the past week. Thank you guys for watching. Leave a like on this video if you enjoyed it and subscribe if you're new. And also, leave a question down below in that comment section and I'll try and answer it in the next mailbag. So with that being said, that's a wrap for this video. I'll catch you guys later. As always, peace out. Go Blazers.